welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I'm your full-voiced host, Madelyn.
I'm your 3/4 of a voice host, Emma.
And together we're 1 3/4 of the voices of Talk This.
Yes, that is who we are. I'm just missing a little bit of the normal fullness, the richness of my voice that I know you're so used to.
Well, fortunately, listeners, we've decided that even though Emma is ill and I am currently on a plane home from Georgia, that we were not going to put off our podcast. That's right, our podcast was going to come out on schedule, Sunday at noon, come heck or high water, no matter what.
Heck or high water, that's intimidating.
Yeah, we don't take any heck over here at Talk This.
I just mean, I'm pretty bad at swimming, so.
I don't think the mics would last either. But we stick to our schedule. I'm proud to say that Talk This has not once been delayed.
That's true. Just our other things.
All of our other content runs on no schedule. There was one glorious 3-month stretch where I did post weekly Clickbait Boyfriends and we did post weekly split screens.
Yeah, but that's not life anymore.
That is long time past. Anyway, as you might have picked up from my bragging about our ability to stick to a schedule, this week's Side Quest episode, picked by your favorite 3/4 voiced host, Emma, is about game delays.
Yes. There's been, I guess not so recently now, it's been about a month or so, but there was a rash of all the spring releases just suddenly being like, actually, we need a little bit more time, folks. And just moving their release dates in sort of a big seasonal delay season with The Last of Us 2 moved its release date back in... I don't remember when they moved it, but they were originally in February and then moved to May. And then more recently, the Avengers game moved from April to September. Final Fantasy VII Remake had the shortest one, moving from March to April. Cyberpunk 2077 moved from April to September, yeah?
Something like that. Spring to September, certainly.
Yeah. And something else, right?
Every game. When was Doom Eternal delayed? They were just posting about that the other day, or today. I saw on Twitter. They were like 1 month. But that got delayed, right?
That got delayed back in the fall, I think.
Well, maybe when did Watch Dogs get delayed?
Oh, that was also recently. Yeah,
okay.
Ubisoft delayed all their games.
Every
actually.
game.
All their upcoming games. Yeah.
They've all decided that we should be productive this spring.
Yeah, apparently. Ubisoft is the only delay that's, kind of concerning for their games, to me, as a consumer. In terms of, they had, set release dates and then moved them to Q4 2020. Basically.
I mean, isn't that a healthier business practice, though? That they're not setting themselves up for failure again?
I guess so. That's fair. But it does seem to indicate that they have less of an idea of how much work is left on all their games, as opposed to these other delays.
You aren't worried about the Avengers?
Not really, no.
I mean, I'm worried about them for other reasons, I guess. But...
I'm worried about them because of fundamental design choices. I'm not worried that the game's going to come out unfinished.
Fair enough.
But I wanted to talk about this because there were so many of them, and that people react to delays in various ways. Commonly why? Or, you do you, we don't want you to crunch, do it in your own time. And both of these responses aren't fully informed about why a delay happens or what goes into it.
Yeah, I feel like what I've seen more prevalent in responses this year has been that people are kind of doing that you do you performative kind of, oh, crunch is so bad. We're so proud of you for putting the health of your developers first. This kind of like virtue signaling, when in fact that's probably not really what's going on.
I mean, virtue signaling, yeah, but I mean, it's also just like people don't understand. I don't think it's always like they're, trying to be good. I think sometimes it's actually because they believe that the delay is going to is to alleviate crunch, when that's not really the case. Like, with some rare exceptions, usually it's not because like, our employees will have to work so hard to make this release date, maybe we should push it back. It's, oh man, our employees are working so hard to make this release date and they're still not going to make it. Maybe we should push it back. With the only, at least publicly claimed exception being Animal Crossing recently, where the reason for that delay was pretty clearly stated to be mostly to avoid crunch, interestingly enough.
Do you think that's real?
Possibly to a certain extent, yeah.
When was Animal Crossing originally supposed to come out? Like holidays?
Just 2019. So at least it was delayed 3 months. Possibly more.
Okay.
From an internal release date. But they hadn't made like an official date yet.
I'm just thinking from a big Nintendo release schedule perspective. I feel like having Pokemon come out in mid-November is like, that's enough to drive your sales through the holiday season. And if you're scheduling your releases, why would you put Animal Crossing anywhere in the vicinity of that? When, at least to some extent, they target similar gaming demographics.
That's true. Although, like, at the same time, I don't know how much you have to worry about Pokemon and Animal Crossing competing with each other when those are, like, two of the most wanted franchises. But I understand, like, spreading out your financial situations. That's sometimes just the reason for delays, is that you decide, like, something on another project went wrong and you decide, oh man, now we need money in this quarter, so here's another game that we can move a little bit. Or something to that effect.
I do think the Animal Crossing one giving the excuse of less crunch feels like almost too in line with the ethos of Animal Crossing to me, sort of. Like Animal Crossing being this like warm and fuzzy, wholesome thing.
In which you're drowning in debt still, but sure.
Well, yeah, but like, I mean, okay, let's not get into the whole like, is Tom Nook a good landlord or a bad landlord thing, but like, there's no payment schedule. He doesn't charge you interest.
That's true. It's good that he doesn't charge you interest.
Like, for someone who he donates 90% of his bells to charity, right? We've all seen that screenshot. So yes, even though the delay likely still driven by capitalism, by a warmer and fuzzier capitalism, which is all Animal Crossing is. Warm and fuzzy capitalism simulator.
The statement from Doug Bowser was like...
His last name doesn't get less funny to me.
You know, like at Nintendo, we make, like, you know, sort of games to make you smile, and so we want our employees to have a good work-life balance so they can smile. There's something cheesy to that effect. But at least into their internal developed products, I think that Nintendo puts some amount of stress on that, which is good, particularly over in Japan, where crunch is not just a video game thing. Not that it's not here, too, but...
It's much more cultural here.
Yes.
Or there, I mean, in a way that... Especially just in the way that you think about. Like, here, I feel like if people are crunching, it's like... Not in video games, but in other industries, it's like, look at me, nose to the grindstone, American dream buddy over here. You know?
Yeah.
Which is not... It is not that.
Yeah. It's also worth noting that, like, even if you're trying to move your profits around, delays do cost companies money.
Yeah.
Like, Animal Crossing, like, cost them, like, billions. Like, $2 billion. Their stock went down or something. when the delay was announced. So, like, you do have to factor that in, too. So it's not always just, like, you know, where's your financials going?
No, of course. I mean, it's, as we've discussed on, I feel like, a lot of side quests these past couple months, video game companies are a business, and they make business decisions.
Yeah.
And, man, I was seeing more stuff about censorship this week, and it was just reminding me of that, like, companies are a business. They are a business. They are here to make money.
I mean, the censorship stuff that I saw this week is actually interesting in that it was very much coming from one part of the company against the initial wishes of the other side of the company with the Atlas stuff. So in that case, I have, you know, it's nice that Atlas America doesn't want to translate things that are kind of offensive, you know.
For business reasons.
Sure, but also because they feel uncomfortable doing
I
it.
know.
And at least the company sort of respects that, which is kind of hopeful in its own capitalistic way.
Yes. But also, I feel like I had something else to say. Oh, well, Nintendo certainly has $2 billion to spare.
Sure, yeah.
Like...
Of course.
I'm sure that they have that kind of money. I'm sure that's like pocket change to Nintendo. Of course, the most famous quote about delayed games comes from a Nintendo source.
Yes.
You can't read an article about delayed games without this quote appearing. It's from Miyamoto. The quote is, "A delayed game is eventually good, but a rushed game is forever bad." Is this a real quote? This feels
I'm pretty sure, yes, it's a real quote.
It just feels like a quote that, like, you know what I mean? Sometimes quotes
like
feel like
quote,
quotes that are fake quotes, and this feels fake.
Yeah, I'm 85% sure that's a real quote.
Okay.
I wrote on your note there, like, only half of this is true, but actually, like, none of it is true 100% of the time. Because nowadays, a rushed game can sometimes eventually be good.
Yeah.
And a delayed game is not always end up being good.
Yeah.
Sometimes a delayed game means that something awful has happened and you've entirely mismanaged everything and the game is never going to get salvaged.
Yep.
Sometimes that's what it means.
So we're here to tell you, Miyamoto, you don't know anything about games.
I mean, I'm sure that the sentiment is true like 75% of the time. You know?
Miyamoto, you only know about 75% of games. Whereas we at Talk This have 1 3/4 voices to add to the discussion.
Exactly.
So, Emma, was there anything that motivated you to pick this as other than the, you know, swell of delayed games in January?
I mean, not really. That was mostly it.
Valid.
That's sort of what triggered it. And also just, like, the responses to it. Like, you never see, like, measured responses. Like, my response as a consumer is kind of like, oh, thank God. Because spring was packed for a while.
Yeah.
And now everything is much more kindly spread out for me. Considering I've yet to finish, like, Death Stranding or anything from, like, November. And then my reaction as someone who knows how game development works to a certain extent is like, oh man, those poor developers, is mostly my reaction. Because of, we talked about it at the beginning and then didn't really go into it, but like, people have this initial impression that they're delaying the game so that they have more time to work on it, and also so employees can go home earlier, when it's really just the first part, have more time to work on it. And that, like, the pace doesn't slow down when you have a delay. It just means that you have that many more months of delay. So they set the finish line out, but everybody's still running at the same pace, basically. So it does sort of tie into crunch in that way, as well.
Yeah, there have been a few sort of nasty not nasty, but gross feeling quotes about it from various people in response to these several delays. So one of the CEOs of CD Projekt Red, which is producing Cyberpunk 2077, was quoted saying that even though they had been trying in the wake of the, terrible crunch on The Witcher 3, which is also a game that was pretty substantially delayed, to reduce that kind of policy, that this delay would mean more crunch, not less. Now, CD Projekt Red, based in Poland, is at least obligated to pay overtime.
Yeah.
In a way that U.S. companies dealing with salaried employees are not. So at least people are making more money for sacrificing their youth and health.
Yeah.
So, there's that cold comfort.
I am curious, I haven't looked into the company structure of CD Projekt Red at all, but I wonder how many of their employees and how it works in Poland of being salaried versus being contracted, and if they have contractors, and if they have to pay their contractors overtime.
Yeah, I can't say that I'm an expert on Polish labor law, so I'll leave that one to the Polish labor lawyers in the audience here today.
Because I'm pretty sure the distinguishment here is if you're salaried, then your employer owes you a lot more in terms of benefits, but if you're contracted, they don't really have to do anything for you. Hence why contracting is often popular.
Yes.
Particularly among entry-level jobs.
Well, and also just around delays, not just in the industry, but especially around delays in general. I was seeing some articles that were talking about how contractors were really the only ones who were ever happy about delays, because it means that they get to stay at the company longer.
That's fair, yeah.
Which was an interesting perspective that I hadn't thought about, especially as, people, they, bulk up their staffs to make the game happen.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. It was interesting to be like, oh yes, there are some people who are probably happy that they're going to have to be working really hard for a little bit longer, because at least it means that they are working for a little bit longer. Yeah. It's Crystal Dynamics that's doing Avengers, right?
Yes, that's right.
So you've heard about their overtime system, right? Did you read my note?
Yeah, I read your note.
So at this company, basically your overtime is they track your overtime, which is already not great because theoretically this is it shouldn't be mandatory overtime, right? It's not supposed to be mandatory overtime, but here they are tracking it, and in exchange you get some raffle tickets. Tickets. For raffles.
For raffling, yeah. You could win something.
You could.
A trip to the doctor.
Yeah, not your life back.
Yeah, you'd hope one of the raffles was a time machine. So you can go to the beach while your other self is crunching.
Time machine so you can see your children grow up.
That was dark, Madelyn. That got dark.
Sorry.
As if any game developer has the time to have children. Just kidding.
That was darker.
Do. I know. I'm sorry.
Mine was a dark joke. Yours was the population is shrinking.
The population is not shrinking.
Yeah, I know.
At least overall.
So game development expert Emma, what causes delays?
I mean, a whole bunch of things. We've talked about a little bit. Sometimes it's purely financial. Sometimes your game has already been a little bit delayed and you're coming up against the release of a new console, and then you delay your game more so that you can make it on that new console.
Do you think that's going to happen with, Cyberpunk, for example?
I don't know. I mean, it depends how different making something for the PlayStation 5 would be,
I mean, the rumor is that it's going to have, full emulation.
Whatever the Xbox is called.
There are rumors of some pretty substantial backwards compatibility, so maybe it won't be too different and it won't be as hard, but...
Yeah. But, I mean, a lot of times it's just, you realize that you will not be able to make that release date with a finished game. and you talk your company into letting you push it back.
But why, Emma? They're a business. They have a schedule. Why can't they just stick to the schedule?
I mean, a schedule, because these are... Okay, so the producer is in charge, usually, of setting the schedule and sticking to the schedule. But in a bigger company, you're making that schedule like 2 to 3 years out from when you would want your game to be released. And when you're accounting for detailed work across 2 to 3 years, sometimes your estimates are a little bit off on how much time certain things will take. And of course, you also have to deal with executives wanting the game out at certain times or not. So first off, just scheduling a game is hard, period. It's hard to make a prediction on how long a game will take. Because games are huge and also constantly moving. So I was thinking about it a little bit, and it's like movies and books and TV shows are complicated things to make, especially to make good ones. But eventually you have like finished products to work with, right? Like you have your first draft, or you have all the shots, and you are in the editing room. And with movies, sometimes there are reshoots if you just really did not get all the shots you need. But eventually, like, it's just there and you make it. Whereas with games, like, anything you add to it could potentially break something that was already finished. Because everything sort of affects each other. There's all these systems going on that have to work, one, and then work with each other, too. And so as you keep adding more and more, it becomes more complicated to keep this beast sort of contained and working the way you want. And that's why scheduling is hard, because you never know when 1 month your QA is going to be like, yeah, I found a bug that erases, that bricks the PlayStation, And then you have to drop everything for a month so you can fix that, because that's not an acceptable bug to have in the game. Or there might be a bug that theoretically, like, only affects one part of the game, but somebody is working on a bigger system that also goes into that game and can't work on that part until something is fixed. And so you have people sort of just twiddling their thumbs, basically, because something has to get fixed before they can do their work. So there's just, like, a whole lot of factors to consider that makes it hard, even, like, 6 months out, to be like, yeah, we can do this in 6 months. Because you never know what you're going to find the next day, basically.
You're a QA insider now. How many
sure am.
How many consoles get bricked over the course of an average game development cycle?
I have not bricked any consoles in my QA job. We're not currently developing for console anyway, so that's part of the reason why. But I don't know how many consoles get bricked out.
I was just wondering if there was, like, a QA mafia and you all, like, are on Slack together being like, today I bricked 3 Xboxes. How's your day going?
We do not brag about how many systems we brick. And we do not have a Slack channel either, so far as I know. I have not been invited to the Slack channel.
Dang.
I know.
Slacking.
It's
hey.
very funny. But, like, The Last of Us Part 2, for instance, like, they wouldn't say this until, like, way after 2023. It came out.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, in a post-mortem sometime way down the line at GDC or something. But, like, they announced a delay, like, less than a month after announcing their initial release date. Which makes me think that, like, the week or two after they announced it, they just found something, like, systemically wrong. And we're like, well, I guess let's take another 4 months. Why not? I just feel like they must have found something that was like, whoops. Because that's so soon after releasing it to change their minds.
Speaking of The Last of Us 2, you didn't mention another factor that's delaying games, or really more delaying hardware mostly right now.
Yeah.
Coronavirus.
Yeah. This is because a lot of hardware type stuff is manufactured in China. Obviously. And I'm not obviously, but like everything's made in China. And because they're having such a wide outbreak of this coronavirus, like people at manufacturing companies have actually been like, don't come in.
Yeah.
For a bit. So work is slowing down in a lot of things that get outsourced to China, which is interesting. Like some like self-publishing stuff. I follow some people on Twitter that are like, well, printing is delayed because we print at a place in China and they're not working right now. Or a lot of anime production right now has episodes delayed because they outsource animation to China and they're not doing work right now. And for video games, you get stuff like, the Outer Worlds on Switch is delayed, at least the physical version.
Yeah.
Is it just the physical version?
I sort of assumed it was just the physical version. I didn't do enough reading on it. I don't really see why. No, You know what though? Because I think it's the company that's doing the port is in China.
Oh, that might be it. Yeah.
So I actually think it might be the digital version too.
Sometimes companies will outsource ports of their game to other companies. So that could be the case.
Yeah.
Is that a company in China is doing the port and they're not working right now?
Yeah, because they tweeted again. They were like, everybody's okay. They're just not coming to work.
Yeah. So yeah, illness can definitely be a thing of if there's something sweeping the world or the nation that can affect production.
Yeah. It seems like most of the hardware stuff is a really big thing in Japan right now and doesn't seem to be affecting U.S. supply chain quite as much.
Yeah.
But that Animal Crossing Deluxe Switch and Ring Fit Adventure in Japan,
Not Ring Fit Adventure.
The rings aren't being manufactured right now, so aren't you glad we got our copies?
So glad. But I mean, all developers will really ever say is like, oh, we just wanted a little bit more time to make it like a company name here approved product. And you have to wonder how much of that is actually true, or if it's half true, or if it's not true at all.
I mean, it's true, right? Surely to be a company-approved product, it needs to not cause your television to explode.
Oh, sure. I don't mean like that. I just mean like, are they making decisions? Like, with all the hopping around in spring, I do wonder a little bit if certain companies are like, well, we don't want to be that close to this game, so
right.
Why don't we push it a little bit?
Yeah.
Square Enix announced the delay of Avengers and Final Fantasy VII Remake on the same day, both of which said it was for polish. But you have to wonder if they were just moving Final Fantasy VII Remake into the next financial quarter. And then you have to wonder if 2077 was like, well, we need some more time, and also now Final Fantasy VII Remake is breathing on our necks, and we'd rather go up against Avengers. Just, you wonder. That's all.
It feels like a good business decision. I would not fault them for that.
Yeah. That's why I'm curious about it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they were already up against Avengers, pretty much. Like, they're coming out at similar times.
I would like some more smack talk about these delays.
Why smack talk?
Them being like, yeah, like, we think Avengers is gonna suck. Like, buy our game.
I just mean that I mean, I don't know. I'm doing this off a personal point of view, too, in that, like, I would probably, like, if I had to choose one big game to buy in a month, like, if it would be, like, Final Fantasy VII Remake, then Cyberpunk, then Avengers, right?
Yeah.
So, like, if Cyberpunk was in Final Fantasy VII month, I would just leave it for, like, another 6 months, you know?
I mean, yeah, because it's not a Switch game. It'll be $30 6 months later.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the trick. Because I was gonna say, like, Emma, you have a stipend to buy games. Like, why would you wait? Right? But
I mean, it's a finite stipend.
I know,
right?
but it's like you're gonna buy
big games are expensive. Like, theoretically,
know.
I could only buy like 6 $60 games.
I know. I'm just saying that at first I was like, that's silly. Like, if you're gonna buy it just the next month, like, a big whoop, like, what's the difference? But then I remembered that games decline in price.
Exactly.
I'm a thinker.
You're a thinker.
I don't really feel like there's ever been a delay that has made me angry.
Oh, yeah. No. I've never been angry at
or even a delay that has made me feel substantially disappointed.
Yeah.
Because for me, so one, I have a backlog that is gigantic.
Yeah.
I'm once again playing like 10 games, and on top of that, I have another 10 that I want to play. That I already have or that I could buy for cheap. And then, you know, there's just like, I've only had current gen consoles now. I guess I had the Switch for a while, but like nothing came out on the Switch for a while also. I feel like the first year I had a Switch, there were not that many exciting...
Like, the first 2 years the Switch was out, there was really almost nothing on it. At least it felt that way.
Everyone was still playing Breath of the Wild. They had to give everybody some time.
I guess so.
So that didn't even... Like, I've had the Switch now for, I guess, a little over 2 years. But, like, that first year almost doesn't count. It's, like, almost nothing, you know, Nintendo exclusive was coming out on it that year. I guess I was a little bit like, oh, okay, that's a little disappointing about Animal Crossing. But it didn't... I don't remember it having a definite release date. So how disappointed could I be?
Yeah.
And then on PlayStation, I was like, I've only been current gen in PlayStation for a little over a year, so there just hasn't been that much time for me. I've been so excited by the just glut of riches that I've had having this console that it's been hard to be like, oh, a delay.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I remember being a little disappointed when Fire Emblem Three Houses was delayed by a couple months, but like not like upset. I remember following the news for Persona 5 back in high school.
Right.
But then again, like, I wasn't like, I mean, I'm not a Persona head to begin with, right? Like, 5 was the first one that I completed because I did not like 4. So I never got, like, upset about that. It was mostly funny. A little bit funny. I mean, that's all I can think of, right? I mean, I'm just used to delays at this point, too. It always feels like at least big budget games are, like, delaying by a month or two every once in a while.
Well, it's also that I don't pre-order my games until, like, the day before. This is partially GameStop's fault. Because for a long time, I think it's fixed now. I think there was something that I was able to pre-order on the website successfully for pickup. Maybe I
can't do it still.
Maybe I'm wrong, though. But
I went to it because I was going to spend my $100 and I ended up spending it on games that were already out because I couldn't pre-order to pick up in store.
So this is my call out for GameStop. Look, GameStop's getting some rough press this week already, so sorry.
They're going to go out of business soon.
Sorry for adding to the pile on. But please, fix the pre-order functionality on your site so that I can pre-order to pick up in store.
Yeah.
I don't want to pre-order to ship. I'm not going to pay for day of release shipping when I live within walking distance of a GameStop. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why it's like that on their site when, like, it clearly says, like, pre-order to, ship or pick up in store. But then you can't pre-order to pick up in store. It's not allowed.
But I did. I did for Crash Team Racing this summer. So
I know you did. That's what's so confusing.
Why have they ruined it?
I pre-ordered Fire Emblem Three Houses to pick up in store so I could get the pins.
Which is the only reason that I would pre-order anything anyway.
I know.
Is to get, like, a bonus.
The bonus pins.
Even you would think that the New York GameStop would be the one that would be in danger of running out of things, right?
Yeah.
Because surely it's a GameStop that actually generates money for the company.
Yeah.
Maybe. Who knows? I'm sure the rent is exorbitant. But it's like, I walked up day of, got Pokemon, no problem. I've always walked up day of release and gotten whatever it is, no problem. So, because I'm not a pre-order fanatic, I also probably don't get as upset, because it's not like it's stuff that I've already spent money on.
Right.
Or, you were saying people got upset about Final Fantasy because they had taken vacation days to play it?
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. And, like, I sort of understand the thought process, right? Like, a lot of jobs you do have to put in your vacation request pretty far ahead of time.
But, 3 months ahead of time?
It wasn't... Did they delay it in January?
Yeah.
But late January, right?
Okay, fine. 2 months ahead of time? For,
a month and a half, actually, because it's supposed to be March
fine.
3rd.
Fair enough.
So it was pretty close to the release date that they delayed it.
I guess I just.
But I thought that was interesting because I fully understand people wanting to take off to play Final Fantasy VII Remake. I mean, that's a cultural phenomenon.
I do too, but also if you're the kind of person who is going to take off work to play Final Fantasy VII Remake, maybe I'm stereotyping, but it feels like you would have the kind of job where maybe you wouldn't have to put in your vacation notice 2 months ahead of time.
I think you're stereotyping.
I am stereotyping. Yeah. I recognize that.
I just thought that was interesting, an interesting take on it. Because, yeah, some people do, like, their favorite games are coming out, and they schedule the day around that. And then it gets delayed, and they're like...
Who's the weird person who, like, plans
I mean, to be fair, I told
around...
my teachers I was sick the day Kingdom Hearts 3 came out.
To be fair, you woke up at 2:40 a.m., to play Remind.
I didn't feel... I probably could have said, can I take this day off for Remind? But instead I just woke up super early. But when I was in college and Kingdom Hearts 3 came out, the day of, I was planning to go to class, and then I got it in my hands, and I was like, I'll just put it in. And then the music came on, and I was like, I guess I'm sick. I guess I have a horrible headache. Sorry, Celia. I've disappointed you.
Now she knows.
Yeah, because she listens. Yeah.
You never know.
Well, she can't revoke my... I wasn't taking that class for anything. It was just an extra class, so... She can't take my degree away.
Can you imagine if Breath of the Wild had come out on the Wii U?
It did come out on the Wii U.
But, like, can you imagine if it had really come out on the Wii U?
I know, it would have died. Or maybe the Wii U would have sold a few consoles, like 50. But yeah, I think that we mentioned this, but that's a big reason sometimes, is like, you've got this game, and especially if it's already internal, they're like, oh, we're making a console. I guess we better delay this a little bit and make it for that console.
Yeah.
Since you already know. Or you can be like Persona 5 and put out your PlayStation 3 version about 3 years into the PlayStation 4 life cycle.
I was grateful for that.
I know, it's fair.
I was a little bit very grateful for that.
It's just a little bit funny.
It is funny. It was for me and me alone.
But sometimes that can be, like, for Persona 5, that was a problem because they had to, like, remake a bunch of stuff for the PlayStation 4 version, I remember reading, which ended up delaying them even farther.
Yikes.
Uh-huh.
Hoo-ho. Hoo-hee.
Hee-ho.
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 Oh.
But now it's out, and they can milk it for everything it's got.
Never saw it coming.
But on that note, I do wonder, like, how many of these games are getting delayed because they're like, oh, man, we just, like, the PlayStation 4, Xbox One is not enough for this.
Yeah.
Like, they released, like, Final Fantasy Remake is going to be 100 gigabytes. On 2 discs.
For the first part of the game.
Yes. It's probably because it's a lot of video as opposed to cutscenes done in real time, which takes up a lot more space.
Right.
Because they're probably not compressing them very much because they want them to look really good. So all those compound into a very chonky game.
They look pretty svelte in the game. Svelte and delicate.
It's all
relative
Cloud's
to their polygon.
Giant hair. And just his hair physics are taking up 80
full gigabyte right
gigs.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, if that's 100 gigabytes, I mean, a lot of that is video. You wonder how much, like, Cyberpunk is going to be. I imagine that will also at least be on 2 discs, because, like, Red Dead Redemption 2 was on 2 discs. So, like, they are just reaching the limit a little bit too fast, I feel like.
Surely for Cyberpunk, they'll just ship you a full-size kind of replica of Keanu Reeves that, like, beams the game onto your television.
Will he, like, say encouraging things to me when I die?
Probably.
It's good. I like that. I like that idea. That's the super deluxe $500 edition.
That's what scope creep is called.
When suddenly one day someone comes in and like, what if we made an android Keanu Reeves for everybody? And everybody was like, heck yeah, I'll put in 80 hours a week for that.
Well, we've talked a lot about AAA games. Before we wrap up, I'd be remiss not to mention that delays are also something that almost even more so in more devastating ways plague the Kickstarter games that have become more and more of a thing in this past decade.
Right.
Shovel Knight comes to mind.
Right.
Shovel Knight that got too much money, promised too much, has made excellent games out of it, but boy did they seem done with Shovel Knight.
Yeah. Yeah, the issue with Kickstarter is either, like, you get how much you're asking for it, and that's not actually really enough
Yeah.
to make it. Or you get way more than you're asking for and end up committing yourself to, like, 50 stretch goals.
And it's not enough money to make it.
Yeah. I mean, like, of course more money is great, so I understand why developers are always like, here's the next stretch goal, here's the next stretch goal. But you'd think at a certain point you'd be like, just give us more money.
Yeah.
We're not going to
We'll pay everybody more.
We'll give you the rewards, but we won't make you anything.
That is
like
actually, that's the one delay that I'm upset about. I've been waiting for butt-sniffing pugs for like 6 years.
Do they still send you updates?
Every once in a while.
That's good.
He had a baby. I think that really delayed things.
Yeah, as babies do. Gosh darn babies!
Didn't you hear the beginning of this episode? Game developers aren't allowed to have babies.
It's banned.
Baby ban.
Unless you're, like, a well-known game director, and then you have to have a baby so that you can make a game about being a father.
You can only have a baby
legally required
as research
to become a father.
for your dad game.
For your dad game.
I would like a dad game about a dog dad.
That would be fun.
That's my pitch. We don't even need to do a mashup this week, but that's my pitch for a game. Dog dad.
Yeah.
Also starring motion capture Keanu Reeves.
I like that.
You're welcome.
John Wick side story. Before the dog died.
Oh, man. That would be too sad. That would be too sad. We can't do that.
It's a tragedy. But yeah, like, it's easy to talk about delays in AAA just because those are more high profile, right? Like, even if you're not necessarily interested in that game, if you're interested in games in general, you probably are aware when something from Naughty Dog or Square Enix or CD Projekt Red gets delayed. Whereas with, like, indie developers or smaller things, you're probably not necessarily aware. You know, just because it's there's less people interested in it.
Yeah.
Like, the smaller the product, theoretically, at least, like, the less demand there is. But like Psychonauts 2, for instance, is something that I've been waiting for a while. It's not really been delayed in that they've never, like, set a release date and then changed it. They have set, like, release years and then changed it.
Yeah.
But they haven't been like, it's coming out on this day. Just
No, it's
kidding.
not.
It's just, like, it's just in development. It's like, it's coming one of these years. We'll keep saying it's this year until it finally is this year. And I think you get that a lot. Because it's the same sort of process. Like, even when it's a smaller game with theoretically a smaller development cycle, you still have to go through, like, the scheduling and creating process. And it still can be hard to get that right. If you have a small team, for instance, right? Like, say you're a developer and you have, like, 10 to 15 people, and 3 people get sick for a month. Really badly.
Yikes.
It's like, well, nothing you can do about that, really.
Yep.
Right? Like, I guess we just don't work on art for a month or something like that. Because your artist is just sick. So, like, in that case, even, like, unexpected, unforeseen circumstances can have even, like, a greater effect than they might if, like, one of the cogs in a AAA studio gets a little bit sick for a while. Because theoretically, like, parts, like, even if that person's, like, in charge of part of something, other parts can keep going, you know?
Yeah.
Or take over some of their work. So, like, when you have more people, there's less risk if someone's sick or has a meltdown because they're working 80-hour weeks or something. Let's bring in the next contractor.
You don't have a kid? Great, you're hired.
Great, you're hired. Don't go having a kid now. Here? No kids allowed.
Well,
But anyway, yeah, I just wanted to talk about it because it just really seems like the average consumer just has no idea what a delay means or why it may happen. Or the fact that a lot of times it is entirely out of their control. Because like you said, like, maybe they wouldn't necessarily be putting down a release date to begin with if there wasn't executives being like, hey, we want it out. Hey. Hey.
is that your game
We
executive
want our
voice?
money. Yeah.
Well, folks, it sounds like delays are here to stay, at least until President Sanders socializes the video game industry and takes it all public.
He likes I think he tweeted something about, like, video games.
He has a Twitch channel.
unionize. He does have a Twitch channel. Does anything happen on his Twitch channel? I've
don't
never
know.
checked it. Like, do interns stream games?
It was
Does
like,
he
oh,
turn
we're
up?
out here playing Fortnite with Bernie.
I know. Does he turn up to just, like, score a quick battle royale and then get back on his train? He works out his aggression that way.
Oh, man.
Maybe he's, like, really into something like Eve or something like that, and, like,
No.
he has, like, a socialist
The president,
nation.
like, a presidential candidate cannot be really into Eve. That's not
You
allowed.
never know.
That feels like a conflict of, that's like a Bloomberg level. Like, he's like a billionaire in Eve.
That's kind of interesting, actually.
What
Do you think it would be a conflict of interest if you're, like, really into, like, this sort of immersive online game that, like, extends into the real world type thing?
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. That's a Black Mirror episode for you.
I hope
that
pitched it. Gamer President weighs in on this.
Gamer President thing is so stupid. I see tweets from that every once in a while. I'm like, oh god. So too real.
What's his stance on conflicts of interest in EVE Online? The public has to know.
It has to know.
But folks, has a game that you love been delayed? Have you felt sympathy for the developers, rage for the developers, indifference towards the developers? Maybe not if you feel indifference, but otherwise, hey, drop us a line and tell us about it. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Talk This Podcast, and on YouTube as Talk This Sisters. So drop us a DM, tweet at us, message us, whatever. You know how these platforms work. Come on, you're on social media. I don't have to explain that to you. But what I do need to explain is the URL for our website, which is www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read about the show, see Emma's lovely blogs about each episode. Also on the blog, you can read Clickbait Boyfriend, which I think is going to be coming up soon, if it hasn't already. I have some time this weekend. Had some time this weekend. It's Sunday. So we're going to try.
Madeline, you're giving us away.
I'm sorry. And also Split Screen, where Emma and I are watching My Hero Academia and Coffee Prince. Also on the website.
That should have been up yesterday.
Fun.
Yeah.
Also on the website, you can see the games that are in the hat. So next week we'll be talking about next week we'll be talking about an old game and a new game.
Yep.
And
do we want to do like a PAX episode?
Next week, depending on how exhausted we are after PAX, we might be talking about an old game or a new game, or we might be talking about our experience at PAX.
It's a surprise!
That's why it's important that you subscribe, so you don't miss our surprise episode next week that might be the episode you expect, or it might not be. We're a bunch of renegades over here at Talk This. So you can subscribe anywhere you find podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora, on the app and online. Anywhere there are podcasts, you can find Talk This.
Speaking of YouTube, I have a Premiere project with a whole minute edited, so
now is the time to subscribe to YouTube, because there will be a new video in August.
It's pretty accurate. I'll announce the release date next week, and then add like another 3 months, because I'll be announcing a delay pretty soon after
Scope
that.
creep.
It kind of is. I have to make like a new intro sequence. Like, I'm like, oh, I could just hunt down the old one and stick it in. But then my little voice in my head was like, what if you made a cool new one and spent 2 hours on it? And that seemed like a good idea.
You know what I am sad has been indefinitely delayed?
What?
Noodletus.
Oh, man. I want to replay Final Fantasy 15, but also I have 1,000 other games to play.
That was a reference to the long-time listeners. Anyway, folks.
The good old days.
Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week. Catch us at PAX if you aren't sick.
Yeah. There's no coronavirus in Boston. There's one, actually. I think there's one coronavirus. A singular
corona.
one. So don't let Sony scare you too much. That's all.
All right, Emma. Do you want to wish the good people well?
This week, I hope that you get your stuff done on time.